Good evening everyone, and we're live. So today I thought that we will go through a different video. So we are not in the game, but instead we are looking at a Google Doc, which will be available in the description of the video and also on Reddit. And for today we will show the PvP tier list for September 2020. So what is this PvP tier list? Is a list effectively mainly aimed at high levels of galactic duel. So what are the saints and certain compositions that are more effective, let's say at diamond and above. Most of the recommendations are still valid for lower levels, but effectively this is mainly intended for diamond and above galactic duel. Now, of course, when we look at the Jameer main tournament, or the Jameer qualifications, also the tiers in the list today, they're still meaningful in the sense that, of course, when we look at the qualifications, we need to have 2 teams of 6 saints each, so 12 saints, and the final tournament for Jameer, we need then 3 teams of 6 saints each, so we need 18 saints. So hope you find this video useful. So we will effectively start from the must ban category, look at that category, and just give a very brief description of the saints in there in terms of minimum skills and cosmos required, and then move on. So let's just start with the one saint probably above everyone else, and as you can expect, that saint right now is Thanatos. So Thanatos has completely changed the meta when he arrived, and is a saint that has a very significant impact because of the extreme damage that he does. So Thanatos ideally will be at least at 1,445. He should really be at 1,455 when playing at high levels. In terms of central Cosmo, it will be either the 2-horned snake or chimera. So there are different ideas and different ways to play Thanatos with either of the two. Both work. Now, in terms of speed, it's always very good to have Thanatos with very high speed in order to be able to mark somebody who still has to act in the first turn of the opponent. However, many people are also opting to use the Naga pearls as blue Cosmo, which clearly gives up quite a lot of speed. So again, is a very flexible in terms of what Cosmos he gets. It is quite important to have life steal at high level, because with high life steal, Thanatos will effectively be able to fill himself back to 100% when either his 4th ability is triggered or when his 3rd ability is triggered. So Thanatos must ban. Now, of course, if we are in a double ban territory, you always need to consider how the skills of your Thanatos can compare to your opponent. So having a Thanatos with lower skills than your opponent is going to make a very big difference. So even if you have Thanatos, but if you believe that your opponent's Thanatos is stronger, then banning Thanatos may still be a good idea. So let's move then to the double S, so not as strong as Thanatos, but just one step below. And let's start with Thanatos twin, so Hypnos. So Hypnos, when he arrived on Sensei Awakening KOTZ, made a massive impact on the game again. And in the first period of Hypnos availability, people will tend to use him also as a pure damage dealer. So we would see many Hypnos with two-horned snake trying to really kill somebody in the enemy team when the enemy team didn't use June. So this was possible again because when Hypnos came out, still Gemini Kanon wasn't there, so there were a lot less Junes being played. So Hypnos at that point was a very strong damage dealer. Now, after Gemini Kanon, and as a result the appearance of many more Junes and Underworld Shuns, and also after the appearance of Thanatos with his massive damage both AoE and single target, the role of Hypnos has effectively changed from being a damage dealer to be effectively a pure support and healer. So we see very often, because of the disappearance of Mew from the metagame, Mew is a lot less played than before. So we see often Hypnos being played with Lost, so providing the constant heal over time to the entire team, which makes a very significant difference to many games. And in particular, given Hypnos is very often played with June, it does allow to stabilize the entire team thanks to this heal over time. So it is quite frequent because of this to see Hypnos with a Laurel tree as central Cosmo. So Hypnos is still extremely useful for manipulating the enemy's team, and in particular, for example, when using Decelerator instead as a central Cosmo, Hypnos, for example, can try to move a different saint in the last spot of the enemy team when the enemy team is playing Afrodite, so that Afrodite doesn't use all the remaining left energy. Or for example, Hypnos can try with the Decelerator to slow down the enemy Hypnos to gain an advantage in terms of placing the marks on the enemy Hypnos. Or for example, again, slowing down Underworld Shun in order to place him after the character who will get the mark. So Hypnos has been through an evolution, is still an extremely strong character, just below Thanatos. In terms of skills, Hypnos works already pretty well at 1144. So many people think that the minimum is 1154, but Hypnos already does work quite well at 1144, and the reason is that having the third ability at 5 is effectively only useful for the first mark, which is effectively only placed once every 3 turns. So investing 8 blue books or 4 green books for that might not be the best idea, and given all the characters who need so many books right now. And also, this is even more true because of Thanatos. So Hypnos has been made more vulnerable because of Thanatos. And if there are 2 marks taking damage, the hunger for Thanatos grows twice as quick. And that's why sometimes it might even be better to miss that first mark. So for example, if the opponent is playing another Hypnos and is playing, for example, June and is playing Hades June and is playing Mew, placing 2 marks might not really add much advantage. So placing the mark on Mew in that case is what is really mandatory. If the opponent has Thanatos, placing double mark will cause Thanatos anger to grow twice as quickly. So that's it about Hypnos. So let's move to the next SS character, and he's Gemini Kanon. So Gemini Kanon, the strongest S-level saint. So because of Gemini Kanon, we've seen the reappearance of June in the metagame, and we've seen Underworld Shun also becoming played very, very often precisely to counter Gemini Kanon. It is incredibly strong, and it is also quite difficult to counter, and again, thanks to Thanatos, who caused Mew to become less seen in the metagame, effectively Kanon became even stronger because of less Mews being played. So considering how the metagame has evolved and the presence of the June and Underworld Shun, it is quite frequent that we see in the first turn Gemini Kanon being played just to provide the additional 3 energy to the team. So basic attack and 3 additional energy provided. And then as the game progresses and Kanon in any case gains some determination stacks, then the damage he provides to the team becomes very significant. So in terms of skills, probably the recommended setup is 3-5-5-3, and after that 3-5-5-5. So the first one at 3 purely to gain at least 1 determination mark when doing the basic attack, and then the third one is mandatory at 5 to gain the 3 energy. The second one, if you're not playing at very high levels, possibly could still work at 4, but really if you have Kanon, like you try to push him to the max. The last ability again at 3 is ideal. After that you gain some benefit for higher levels every time one of your saints die, but I would say my recommendation is to have him at least 3-5-5-3. In terms of Cosmos, right now is much more frequent to see him with Equinox Flower as the central Cosmo, and because of the significance of the absolute damage in his attacks, for Kanon really the main objective is to be super fast. So sometimes it is also possible to use New Moon instead of Hummingbird as the blue Cosmo. So that's it about Kanon. So let's move to the newest saint, which is also the newest double S saint, and it is Ophiuchus Odysseus. So Ophiuchus Odysseus has arrived in Global 2 weeks ago, and again he's an extremely strong support saint. He's also probably the saint that requires the highest amount of skill books, because to be effective he really needs to be at the very least 1555, and that's because the second skill needs to be at 5 to access the revival skill. The third skill needs to be at 5 to gain the very strong physical and cosmic damage resistance and lifesteal, to provide that to the entire team. And the fourth skill needs to be at 5 to significantly increase his resistance. Now, again, if you're playing at lower levels, trying to have the last skill at 3 could also work, and also like the bare minimum for Odysseus will really be 1, 2, 5, 1. So that is an Odysseus who effectively most of the time will be casting the healing ability, and at some times when there is a strong expectation that the opponent will use a significant damage skill, to use reflex. So again, for high levels, 155, that's 60 books, and that's the highest number of books across all the characters that we've seen. And but below, but for lower levels in PvP, even 1553, or at very minimum 1251 could work. So in terms of Cosmos for Odysseus, he really is an extremely flexible character, so he can be either very slow or very fast. It really depends on the type of strategy that you want to use. So if you're trying to outspeed the enemy Gemini Kanon, of course you will need to try to go for double speed substats on all your Cosmos, and likely use New Moon as well. But the reality is there are somewhat limited benefits in just trying to outspeed Gemini Kanon. Having an Odysseus with Nether and for example heal book or other defensive Cosmos can be absolutely as effective. And if you're trying to have a slow Odysseus, he could then at that point become the carrier of the Marsh Fairy, so trying to be the last of his team to act without doing damage, and thereby going to next turn with his Marsh Fairy still active. Other possibilities are of course Laurel Tree for healing, or even the Two-Horned Snake for damage. So again, absolute flexibility in how you build him. Those are some of the options. Now, in terms of double S, I'm also going to place Repair Cloth Hades here. So Repair Cloth Hades is a saint who does extremely well in a team with Sea Dragon Kanon, Underworld Shun, and Mew at the very least. So it is a somewhat predefined team. However, I've seen him also being played in other teams with Thanatos, for example, Hypnos, purely because of the large HP reduction and AoE he provides, and also because of the additional defensive ability that he provides to the team because of the ability to resurrect his teammates. Now, with the repaired cloth, Hades become even more expensive in terms of books. So the bare minimum would be something like 3, 4, 4, 3. So that is so the first skill at 3 gives you a 90% to effectively place a slave mark. So you will still miss 1 in 10. So if you, of course, in an ideal world, you'll be able to take also the first skill at 4 to have 100% chances of placing a slave mark, but at 3 is an acceptable risk. So the second skill is at 4 because of the maximum HP reduction of 30% that you reach at 4. So having the second skill at 5 allows Hades to transfer more damage with the first mini pact that he creates as soon as he casts the Eclipse. So it is significant. Now, whether you want to spend 8 blue books to have it, again, it's up to you and depends on what levels you play. But for example, the large AoE that Hades releases when he casts the Eclipse, that is not affected by the skill level on this second skill. So the third skill, again, ideally is at 4, because at 4 it creates the pact for 3 turns, which is the maximum. And the fourth skill is instead minimum at 3, because that's what gives the 100% chance of leaving the soul for any party member who is killed. So again, the minimum is 3, 4, 4, 3. However, ideally, Hades should really be 4, 5, 4, 5. So his maximum potential is reached at 4, 5, 4, 5. Again, please do watch my Hades Repaired Cloth review. And as I said in that video, it's very important to try and repair his cloth because of the massive bonus to all your saints that he gives, which is 21% cosmic damage and 7% status resistance. So in terms of Cosmos, Hades can use either Dragon Tooth or the Book of the Dead. So those are the most commonly used and strongest. So these are the 4 double S characters. So again, any team in Galactic Duel can ideally have a mix of these first 5 characters and be very strong. Now, if you're in double ban territory and you do not have one of these and you see that your opponent is using them, ideally you should try to ban one of these. Or again, if you plan to play the 4 of them and not the 5th one, it's always a good idea to potentially ban that if you don't have if you do not see in the enemy team anything that you really want to ban. Now let's move to the S level characters, and here we have Underworld Shun. So Underworld Shun again has evolved when Thanatos and Gemini Kanon and even Ophiuchus appeared. So in the past, Hades Shun used to be played quite fast to give the double turn, for example, to Milo or to Shura. Now that has changed because effectively both Milo and Shura have disappeared from the metagame, and right now Hades Shun is played effectively to be almost the slowest of his team, and is played with very high healing substats, and that is to effectively offset attacks from Gemini Kanon and the other strong attackers in the enemy team. So being played in this way, Hades Shun is also very frequently the carrier of the Marsh Fairy for the team, because if he's the last one to act, again, as we said for Odysseus, he will not do any damage, and so he will maintain the Marsh Fairy active into next turn. Now, Hades Shun has a base speed much lower than Odysseus, so the plan to have him to be the last one acting in your team is much easier to achieve with Hades Shun. So the second of the S-level characters is then another defensive character, and is June. Again, she reappeared in the meta thanks to the appearance of Gemini Kanon, and in combination with Hypnos, she makes an incredibly strong defensive team, because the heal over time provided by Hypnos and the damage sharing provided by Shun effectively can keep the entire team alive. So she's ideally played very, very fast in order to go before the enemy Kanon, or very shortly afterwards, to avoid a second Saint in the enemy team focusing the same target that Gemini Kanon attacked. So quite flexible in terms of Cosmos used. New Moon will almost always be the blue Cosmo, but for the other ones quite flexible with as many double speed substats as possible. So we then go to the last S-level Saint in the defensive Saints. So again, as we see, the first three that we're seeing in the S category are all defensive Saints, and the third one is DC Shun. So DC Shun has been made very, very strong because of the appearance of Thanatos, and DC Shun is effectively able to entirely offset the fourth skill of Thanatos, and in the following turn to potentially create such massive damage to kill few Saints in the enemy team because of the third skill. So for Hades Shun, ideally you will try to have her 1-1-5-5. If you plan to use her to use him offensively, having the third skill at 5 is the most important, and having Daffodil as legendary Cosmo is also very important. Otherwise, DC Shun can be played with Dragon Teeth to be more defensive, and for example, because because Divine Cloth Shun will always be the target of the enemy Thanatos, using Dragon Teeth potentially can keep him alive 2 more turns. So extremely good Saint. Of course, playing together June and DC Shun might not be ideal, so sometimes we see them in different teams, but they can still work very well together. So now after these first three control saints in the rank S, let's look at some of the other saints. So in terms of offense, so Mew is still very strong. He is no longer the best damage dealer of the game after the arrival of all the ones in the above categories, but he is still very strong, and in the last week has been made stronger thanks to the arrival of the repaired cloth Hades. So as I said earlier, Mew is one of the core team members in the Hades team with Sea Dragon Kanon and Underworld Shun. So very strong, very good counter against Gemini Kanon, since he's the only saint who can hit him while he's invisible, and also something that has helped Mew has been the arrival of the new Red Cosmo Dragon Chant, which makes him even stronger. So S level for Mew, the Cosmos for Mew have been there for quite a while. So as you know, Felina is the strongest legendary Cosmo for Mew, and because of how the metas evolved, Mew does not really need any speed substat for the Cosmos, which makes also finding some decent Dragon Chants quite easy. So the second damage dealer in the S category is Afrodite. So because of the repaired cloth, Afrodite has effectively become the strongest of the 12 gold saints. So when using Afrodite, is always quite useful to use the Ares God skill, which will significantly increase Aphrodite's damage, and will also allow to crowd control one of the enemy saints. So in terms of the skills for Aphrodite, the recommendation is to have at least 1155. It can still work quite decently even at 1144, and of course, like, the more skill books you have, the third and fourth skill should be the ones given priority. So in terms of Cosmos, now Aphrodite uses Naga Pearls, and in terms of Central Cosmo, the most offensive Aphrodite would actually use Chimera and the double turn from Underworld Shun. So using Chimera and the double turn from Underworld Shun, Aphrodite is able to generate even 1 million damage on the third turn already. So extremely strong damage dealer. So this is it in terms of the damage dealer in the S rank, and now we look at the controls at the S rank, and the first one is effectively Sea Dragon Kanon, and Sea Dragon Kanon is now at the S level because of what we said about the Hades repaired cloth team. So Sea Dragon Kanon effectively works extremely well in that team. But Sea Dragon Kanon not only works well with that team, is also the best counter currently available for Hades repaired cloth, because the Golden Triangle skill from Kanon effectively negates the Hades AoE when releasing the Eclipse. Also, the Golden Triangle is able to break the pact that Hades creates, so both the mini pact and the main pact. So Kanon, until Garuda arrives, is effectively the only counter for both the pact and the AoE from the Eclipse. And not only that, so Kanon with Golden Triangle is also a fantastic counter to Thanatos' third skill and fourth skill. So when Thanatos is exiled, he will not release his fourth skill after the 2 turns for any enemy, and again he will not release his third skill either. So Kanon, best counter for Thanatos and Hades, and works fantastically in the Hades repaired clothes team that we discussed earlier. So these are the S characters. We can then move to the A characters. So let's start with Athena. So Athena again is played a lot less than before. Now we see that sometimes what used to be her function of providing energy is provided by Kanon, and so that's why we've seen her appearing less and less. She does probably she has become stronger in the last period because of the arrival of Odysseus and Hades Repair Cloth, and thanks to the fatality used by Athena, which negates both the pact for Hades and the revival for Fucus, that has made her stronger, but she's definitely used a lot less than before. So I would say A now in terms of Cosmos. Felina, if you have her set up offensively with a very high cosmic attack and cosmic damage. Otherwise, she can also be your Marsh Fairy carrier, or she can be used with Decelerator to disrupt the enemy team. So again, A category used a lot less. So this is Shiryu, unfortunately, because of the various Hypnos and now Odysseus, has been made less relevant in the metagame, because Hypnos, of course, negates his counterattack, and Odysseus is able to negate the large shield placed on himself. And on top of that, the arrival of DC Shun, who is effectively a better defensive character, made DC Shiryu less significant. Also because DC Shiryu is significantly more expensive than DC Shun in terms of skill books investment. So it's still quite decent. So if you already have him skilled, you can still find some teams where to use him. But if you pull him now, probably it's really not worth to invest the large amount of tomes that he needs. So level A in terms of Central Cosmo, possibly what is most used now is the Book of the Dead, and then as Blue Cosmo after the arrival of Naga Pearls, DC Shiryu now uses those. But again, if you pull him now, it's probably not worth investing that much in him. So then we have Repair Cloth Mu. So Repair Cloth Mu is fairly recent. So he was weakened by the arrival of Odysseus, who has the ability of negating one of the walls that Mew creates. So just to be clear, so when Odysseus activates the Shatter ability, Mew, for example, if he tries to cast the wall on himself, that will be nullified. Now, however, if Mew has already the wall on himself and Odysseus casts the Shatter ability and then Mew does a basic attack, what happens is that only one of the two new walls being created will be nullified. So again, if Shatter is active and Mew does basic attack with the wall on himself, what will happen is that one of the walls on the team will still be created. So the Shatter ability only nullifies one of the walls. Now, why is he only A? It's because, as we said, of Odysseus, but also because Mew remains vulnerable to crowd control. And for example, if the opponent is playing the Ares God skill, Mew will be the most frequent target, and for example, using an Ares God skill from Afrodite to Mew can be absolutely lethal. So again, is very weak to crowd control. To be able to use him effectively right now can be a problem, because to be able to use the basic attack, either you play with Luna, who at the moment is not very used in the meta game, or you play with a slower Underworld Shun. The problem is that your opponent will know that the best way to counter Mew playing with Underworld Shun is to actually destroy the single wall that Mew places on himself. So your opponent, if playing at high levels, will know that he will have to counter the wall that Mew placed on himself. So it's a good character, but relatively easy to counter. Now, in terms of A Saints, we then have Geki, who effectively can almost be across S and A, and that is what we will do. So the extreme strength of Geki is that he's able to counter Aphrodite. So countering Aphrodite effectively not only totally negates any damage from him. Now that is assuming that there isn't an Underworld Shun in the same team, but also, for example, negates Aphrodite the possibility of casting the Ares God skill on someone from the same team. So that's why the stun for one single mana is very important. Now, the other very strong advantage that Geki has is that he can potentially stun, and he does it very often, even with his basic attack. So even if in the first turn you be left with 0 mana, Geki can still quite likely stun one of your enemies. So because of that, he's let's place him between S and A. In terms of Cosmos, he can be, again, he will usually be the last one in your turn. So because of his single target damage, he can be your Marsh Fairy carrier. Otherwise, Dragon Teeth works well on him. And then in terms of other Cosmos, Crimson Eagle, Seiya, and again something else with speed will work well on him. So again, another saint that we will then also place across S and A is then the Pope. And that is because a very fast Pope can create massive disruption to the enemy team. And for example, as we said, we've seen that the Hades repair cloth team is becoming more frequent, and effectively the Pope can be a great counter to that team by effectively negating Kanon Strangle or even the initial Hades Eclipse. Now, to negate the original Hades Eclipse, you will need to be extremely strong, but extremely fast. But it is sometimes possible if the opponent hasn't tried to get Hades to be super fast. But again, it can negate Triangle, it can negate Muse attacks, so extremely strong. Now there is also the possibility to use the Grand Pope within the Hades team. So as we said, the core components of that team are Hades, Mew, Underworld Shun, and Sea Dragon Kanon. The other two components are flexible, but I have seen quite frequently the other two team members to be Gemini Kanon and the Grand Pope. So effectively, with the 6 manas you have in the first turn, you're able to cast the Eclipse with Hades and another dimension with Grand Pope, which does give you an extreme advantage. So in terms of Cosmos, it should be built as fast as possible. So New Moon, and then possibly Mandala as central Cosmo with the speed substats, and as many speed substats as possible. So in terms of the other controls, let's look at Shaka. And the Shaka is now in the A category, and the main reason why Shaka has lost so many slots is because of Thanatos and this issue. So the AoE created by Shaka generates a massive amount of anger for Thanatos. So it can be very tricky to play him optimally, unless of course you are trying to ban Thanatos. So if you ban Thanatos, Shaka can still be decent. However, the problem is that if the opponent is playing Underworld Shun and this is Shun, the opponent can then find ways around Shaka's silence, mute, and hash. So if the opponent is playing DC Shun, for example, Shaka is forced to silence DC Shun instead of any opponent after him. And that can be quite tricky, in particular because Underworld Shun will play after DC Shun, which means that Underworld Shun can, for example, give double turn to Gemini Kanon, so that even if Kanon is silenced or muted or hashed, then he can still do a basic attack and then his normal attack. So again, he's still decent if you ban Thanatos, but not that great. His main function is probably being a good counter to the Hades repair close team, but for example, again, versus Afrodite or versus Mew, Shaka is unfortunately quite useless. again, in terms of Cosmos, if in the past having a super fast Shaka was the only way of playing him, it is now possible to have him a bit slower. So again, can be quite flexible in terms of Cosmos used, but is no longer one of the best characters. So we then have Minos, and Minos is extremely strong again. He's less strong than I would say either the Pope or Geki, because of the two energies he needs to control as opposed to one or even zero energies that Geki needs, and because controlling Hypnos effectively then means that controlling Minos means that Minos control will be broken. So for example, I've seen quite frequently Geki being used to stun Minos, thereby ending Minos control on another character. So is a very good counter, for example, against the Hades team, because of the ability, for example, to control Hades and to create a pact with someone, usually Mew, within Hades team. But again, is probably both the Pope and Geki are above him right now. Again, as a reminder, he does not work at all against Afrodite, for example. And again, it doesn't work against Gemini Kanon or Thanatos. So definitely not as strong as he used to be. In terms of Cosmos, it should be as fast as possible to again try to anticipate someone like, for example, Sea Dragon Kanon, or even Mew or Odysseus. Now, if played with Hypnos, usually you can try to control the enemy Hypnos to waste one energy by using inverted reality and by effectively not placing nightmare marks on your own Hypnos. So in that way, you can ensure that your Hypnos maintains his ability active. So good character, but probably only at the A level. So in the A category, we also have then Pog Yoga. And Pog Yoga was clearly made less relevant because of the arrival of Hypnos. However, it's been made more relevant again thanks to the arrival of the Hades repaired cloth, and Pog Yoga can be one of the two additional team members outside of the core team, because, for example, in the first turn, Yoga can already cast the cross on Hades, so that once Hades activates the eclipse, then effectively he's already sharing damage, and for example, having the cross on Hades can potentially force Thanatos Mark also to go on Hades, and who again is sharing damage thanks to the mini pact generated by the eclipse. So very strong. It can also play very well in combination with Guilty. So the main point of that team is to force attacks on Guilty, who then eats someone else, either Yoga himself or, for example, Athena, and by doing that gives a massive damage buff to the entire team, with Thanatos usually being able to almost kill the entire team with his AoE. So very strong. Again, it should be built with maximum speed. So in the past we've seen Pog Yoga being built almost as a DPS with, for example, King Giant as Central Cosmo. Right now it should really be extremely fast to, for example, redirect Gemini Kanon or redirect Thanatos or any other of the fast attackers. So that was effectively all for the A characters. In terms of B characters, we have Sorrento. So Sorrento Repair Cloth becomes quite strong. However, needing 4 mana effectively means that the entire team will be based around him. So it's still possible to do it, but of course it does create some issues. And if your opponent somehow manages to kill Sorrento or to control him, it can really be a problem. So I'm not going to talk about Cosmos for like B and C characters. So most of the Cosmos for these characters are the ones that you've always seen, but please do ask in the comments whether you want to know any specific detail for any of these characters. So together with Sorrento, we then have the 2 core members of the Freeze team, so Yoga and Makamus. So again, the Freeze team was significantly affected by the arrival of Hypnos and Gemini Kanon, and finally now also by the arrival of Hades Repair Cloth. So he's an okay team, so he still can be played. So for example, in the Jamir main tournament, we've seen some ice teams, but the reality is that these Saints are not really your top 6 or even top 12 Saints to use in a team. So again, B, let's also have the Nero Priest. Again, is a 1 mana control, so it's the same as Geki. However, she's significantly weaker than Geki, and because of that, even though she's faster, so her main function would be to silence the likes of Gemini Kanon or Hypnos, effectively she can easily die in the first turn. So because of that, B, really. So Andromeda Shun, again, quite a good character. So again, if you need to use many teams in the Jamir qualifications or in Jamir final championship, so Andromeda Shun can definitely find a place. However, the other controls that we've seen are above him. And like the main advantage of, for example, using Andromeda Shun versus Hypnos is that Andromeda Shun's control is not broken by being controlled by someone else. However, the reality is that Minos can reach significantly higher speed levels than Andromeda Shun, so it can effectively control somebody who Andromeda Shun will not be able to control. And also Minos can be used, for example, for wasting the enemy's energy, or for example when playing against an ice team, Minos can be used to remove all the freeze stacks by doing the Aurora Execution with Camus. So So Andromeda Shun is still a decent control, but is probably below both Minos, Geki, and of course even below Sea Dragon Kanon and the Pope. So now in the C category, we then close with Shura. So again, is really not played at high levels because of how fragile he is, and because of the need to use double turns. So placing Thanatos mark on Shura can be very bad for effectively the entire team, because if there is June, like the damage transfer to the entire team can be massive, and even if there is DC Shun, the reality is that Shura will be very quickly left at 1 HP and thereby be killable very quickly unless DC Shun completely tries to protect him, which might not be the best idea. So definitely he has lost quite a lot of utility. So Ichi, again, we place him as C because his main function was in the Ichi Minos or in the Ichi Airos, who are no longer really played that much. Minos is still played on his own, but the reality is that unless playing again in Jameer qualifications or final tournament, you probably will not really see Ichi in high levels of Galactic Duel. Again, Kiki used to be the key energy provider and was then replaced by Athena, and as we said earlier, we now seen that Athena has also been replaced by Kanon. So again, when playing with multiple teams, Kiki can still be needed. For example, if you're already using Kanon or Athena in other team compositions that you need to use for Jameer, but otherwise is not really easy to find him at the high levels. And finally, we also place Guilty in the C category purely because of this synergy with the Pog Yoga Thanatos team that we mentioned earlier. So this is how I see PvP at the moment. So tomorrow or the day after, probably we'll have a look at some of my PvP matches, and we'll see how effectively like the saints that we discuss now are the most frequently seen. Again, please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Please do give me any suggestions you have for next videos, and what you would like to see in next videos, and how to improve them. And please do subscribe if you like my videos, and I will try to do a few more. So that's all for today. Thanks a lot for watching.